Web3 is a fascinating field to work in. Use this video as a roadmap that will lead you to become a Web3 developer. Before we dive into the roadmap, first we need to understand what exactly Web3 is. And for that, we need to understand the differences between Web 1, Web 2, and finally Web 3. Web 1.0 refers to the first stage of the World Wide Web. Between 1991 and 2004, we saw the first generation of the internet, which was mostly a bunch of static sites. The web looked something like this. It was mostly just one big website, including hyperlinks to different sites. Whenever you loaded up a site, they just show some stuff and that's it. We can say that it was a read-only web. There were zero interactions. There were no things such as authentication, comments, and analytics. It was just a one-way communication tool. During this time, internet users were just consumers. They went to the internet to consume information. Then Web 2.0 was born. Web 2.0 started forming around 2004, and it is still improving. During this time, the web evolved a lot. The boring read-only pages were replaced by Web 2's interactivity, social connectivity, and user-generated content. Interactivity was the main change in the web. Now, the users not only consume the information from the web page, but can also interact and send information through the website. The names like Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3 don't necessarily correlate with specific web technologies. Rather, they explain how the web is being used. For example, Web 2 is all about interaction and collaboration in a social media dialogue. As you know, today we watch a lot of YouTube videos, like posts on Facebook or Instagram, and perform Google searches. All of these are owned by centralized companies. For example, Meta and Google are collecting data about us so they can serve us better content, which in return would make us stay longer on their websites. So why do they do that? Well, the answer is quite straightforward. Because they can make more money if we stay on their websites longer. And that brings us to the biggest problem with Web 2, and that is the lack of privacy and the fact that total control is in the hands of middlemen, the big corporations. And to discard that whole centralized system, Web 3 comes into play. Web 3 is also known as decentralized web, and it is the third and the latest phase of the internet. Web 3 is built on peer-to-peer networks of computers that talk to each other without middlemen. All of the data in Web 2 is controlled by the big tech companies, such as Google, Apple, Meta, or Microsoft. In the decentralized web, no single person or a company owns any data or information about anyone or anything. Everything is completely visible and connected to the public. The whole point of Web 3 is that data is shared rather than owned. So why exactly is Web 3 better? The centralized internet relies on servers that can go down at any time or they can be hacked, whereas a decentralized internet relies on a peer-to-peer network built by a community of users. Their interconnected devices host the internet rather than depending on a group of centralized, high-powered users. In short, if we really had to summarize this and dumb this down, we could say that Web 1.0 was all about reading the content. It was just about consuming. Web 2.0 was about reading and writing, or rather about the interaction, social media networks, and so on. But the data was owned by companies. In Web 3.0, we can read data, we can write data, but we also own the data. That's the whole point. Now that we understand these differences, let's jump straight to the roadmap.